And then we had to see how much of the data was consumed by this several set of tasks. Later, they showed the things you can buy in places around the world for the price of those data packages that are equivalent. So to give you an example number, in India, in several of the states, for the price of the 500 megabytes, you have to pay your minimum salary of 17 working hours. Try to think for a second, how much of working hours do you pay for your 500 megabyte? And this talk, or this workshop that was, it inspired me to explore this developing apps area, and especially the developing countries one. That was a spoiler for everyone. Yeah. Now let's see if you can make the connection to the next slide from here. So this inspired me to make this connection, and this is the second year I'm working on this project. This is the hashtag I like using for the different tweets about it. If you see anything interesting here, I encourage you to use this hashtag and to tweet. I also encourage you to go and do your own exploration. So the purpose of this presentation is to convince you to go and see how can you contribute to this field. Maybe you have some really cool idea for an app that would be helpful. Maybe you have an idea for some technology you can create that would be useful for this as well. And before I move on to the next slide and tell you what all the map is about, I want to tell you about an interesting Google I/O acquaintance that I made this year, and he's sitting here in the crowd today, and if it's not for him, I would not have been here today and not discovered this magical part of the world, which I'm really happy to be. So, hi Leo, manager of the GDG here. Thank you for having me. So this is called the Mercator Projection, and this is the world map you probably saw at school. Is this how it looks in the schools here? Already know of one country where it's not the standard map, so let me know. Silence in the crowd. Is this like this, or is it a different one? If it's like this, do some acknowledgement. Thank you. It gives the right shapes of the land masses. And this is the Gauss-Peters projection. This gives you the correct area. The reason you have these two and another set and many sets of projections is that the world is obviously round, as we can agree. And if you move it, if you project it on a flat surface, on a two-dimensional, you have to lose some of the information. And then comes the question, which of the information you want to lose? Is it the area? Is it the size? So this one was chosen in many places. However, for example, in the UK, this is the most common map in schools. Now, why would this be the chosen one for most places? As we all know, most of the prints of the maps were happening around this area, which looks kind of nicer here rather than here. This is from a nice website called The True Size of Africa. You should go there and explore. Yeah, so this is entire Africa. This is the US, China, bunch of the European Union, UK, Sweden, and even some Latin American countries. And there's still place for more. Would Russia be bigger or smaller than this? Smaller. Anyone thinks bigger? No, good. You guys know your geography. So this is some numbers. The area of Africa is 30 million square meters. The area of Russia is 17 million square meters. Still bigger than Europe, roughly close enough to the US or to North America. By North America in this map, it's North and Central America. So it's everything that is not South America. Other things we can take from this map is, well, the number of countries in Europe is roughly the same as in Africa, but in North America there's significantly less. The population here is roughly the sum of them both together. And my favorite line, languages. Africa has undefined yet official number of languages, or official, maybe it is defined, but actually in use. The reason that this is such a wide range is because the definition or the separation between a dialect between a dialect and a language was still not made in all the different areas officially. So keep this number in mind. I'm going to go back to it towards the end of the presentation. But remember that this is several times more than the sum of the languages spoken in Europe and in North America. Also, the ratio between the official and the existing languages is pretty interesting here. All this comes from Wikipedia. Any mistakes may be editable. Data consumption. That's an interesting slide. So fixed means landline, Wi-Fi, mobile, right? In Africa, if you compare to Europe and to North America, the number of people who are actually using landline is almost neglectable. And this is also because we take into account countries like South Africa or big cities like Lagos, where they're more modern, and you can assume kind of that the average would be, or the real consumption per person would be pretty low. The nice part is maybe mobile, that it's not significantly less, but only half-ish on the average, which is probably also not the most precise information, but the point that the mobile consumption per person in Africa is not too far from the average consumption per person in Europe, while fixed is significantly lower, and even more, it will never catch up. The reason it probably will not catch up is that if you look back 10, 20 years, you'll remember that you had at home your phone, and then you had to argue with your parents, Mama, I want to go on the internet. No, I need to make a phone call. All those times, it was kind of skipped in most of the parts of Africa. And they kind of landed to the reality that from not having any data or mobile device or media device to having a smartphone. So take a second to think how interesting it is that your first device, your first media device is a smartphone. You skip the part of the computer, you skip the part of the phone, and this can also bring to interesting points that we will go back to later. Just bear in mind how your first phone looked. Take the next few minutes to try to remember. By your first phone, I mean at home, so your parents' maybe first phone. This is kind of optimistic. This is the data consumption that is expected in 2020. This information is based on the Cisco prediction tool, and this is what they make themselves ready for. So you can kind of assume that this will be a top limit, because even if the internet breaks way faster than possible, being Cisco, this is what they prepare themselves to be able to give. And so the fixed part will continue to having this really big gap, but the mobile part will actually catch up fairly nice. This is Project Loon. Project Loon wants to help this last gap that we saw in the mobile part to catch up faster. Anybody in the crowd knows Project Loon? Nice amount of hands, great. This is a project by Google, and this is a hot air balloon that can stay in the air for a while and beam internet. This is going to be used in rural areas, that is, for example, Africa, but also, for example, New Zealand. So maybe on your next trip to some nice remote place, you're going to be using your database on this, which is pretty cool. Your internet comes from a hot air balloon. Project Link. This is an ambitious project of just putting enough hardware to connect the world. As we saw, Africa is huge. And it's going to take quite some time to finish this. And eventually there will be probably good enough internet everywhere. But until it happens, we need to try to come up with more ideas. Internetorg or Free Basics. Someone knows that one? Some hands. Cool. This is a collaboration between Facebook and several big companies where they basically make a platform where websites can join, and then they use the infrastructure that is built by the collaboration between the different partners in the program to make your websites more accessible for people who have problems with connectivity. And this is the coolest thing, Aquila. How many engineers do we have in the crowd? Who would, oh, come on, some of you must be engineers. Still asleep. So the Aquila is by Facebook, Skybender is by Google, and this is an autonomous plane that beams internet. It uses solar energy and it can stay in the air for, I think they completed something like 2-3 months recently, which is pretty impressive. Getting your internet beamed to you from the air, who needs infrastructure? This is an interesting graph. I want you to focus on this yellow bar. So it shows that the landline is fairly low in the world, while the mobile is fairly higher-ish. Any idea why this information is not wrong? Let's look at Europe, for example. It suggests that 76% of the people have a mobile subscription, but only 30% of the people have landline subscription. It means phone, the home connection. How does that make sense? People asleep. So, perfect. Exactly. Mobile is per person, landline is per household. So usually you share a household with 2-3 people, and then this is becoming the average. Now, even that in Africa is significantly lower, and the expectation for that is not to go much higher. The mobile part will eventually go higher. Common devices. So there's smartphone, feature phone, and no phone. Feature phone is every phone that is not a smartphone. The global median is roughly splitting those two. And then, as we can expect, USA, Europe has majority of smartphones. Africa would have a majority of feature phones. This is information based on 2015. When was your last feature phone, people? Nobody remembers. Nokia. Well, this is the common smartphones in Africa. And there's, yeah, some places in the world still use that. Well, it's not updated probably to 2016, but if I don't recall wrong, this is around 2014. Yeah. And yeah, if you want to do your design for African apps, this is devices you should target. If you want to have even more information, you can look. Google has a big project around this where they give properties and introduce the properties of the different devices and how should you maybe, what devices should you plan for, what type of screen sizes, what kind of restrictions you have. And this is, for example, a reason. This is an interesting term, IGDF. It was coined by McKinsey, which is a big consultancy agency, and they say, what is the internet contributing to your country's GDP? And I hope you can see from here, but it starts with Sweden, UK, Taiwan, where it's fairly high, 6-5%. Then we go further down, we see Canada, China, Italy maybe, Brazil, and then the lower part, Angola, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Egypt, Tanzania, and such. Kind of. Yeah. And then there are interesting parts here: Senegal, Kenya, Morocco. And sorry. And the reason for that is some African countries are actually fairly advanced. And they have their GDP, the part of the data of the mobile in their GDP is not so low. So it's actually among the different European countries. And I'm going to show you soon an app that is, for example, one of the big reasons for these things. And see if you have an idea that can maybe push one of those countries up. Maybe you were traveling to one of those and you saw some need that was missing there. And you can make the missing gap there and push this country's GDP up. Mpesa. Anybody heard of it? Good. So this was launched in 2007. This is by Vodafone and several other companies. And what it does, it basically solves the problem of not having a bank. In Africa, not many banks are working for really interesting reasons, actually. So banks did try to go inside, and then they were penalized by the General Banking Association. That is, when there is a money laundering going on, they fine the bank. Now, no one wants to have money laundering, and that's why they have really sophisticated methods to find and to prevent that. Unfortunately, they don't work in Africa. And developing such methods for a new continent where the revenue per client is probably fairly low is just not worth it. And so many banks pulled back, and who knows when there will be the second round of banks going there. So people still want to pay their rent, want to pay their mobile bill, or want to send money. And that's what apps like Mpesa solve. So you have a user there, and you can send money to, you go to a physical booth and you give money, and this is being sent to friends, family, or your mobile provider, or you can transfer this through the app. And they have really high revenues. So it seems to be working pretty well. And it's not only in Africa. A bunch of other areas seem to have this need. Yeah. Maybe see if you can be inspired to project this idea on some other field. This is my favorite slide of this presentation. So I'm going to show you store stats for several countries. So starting with US and Russia, this is from this week. This is from a website called AppTrace. Full disclosure, this is belonging to the company where I work. There is a competitor, it's called App Annie. And the reason that I prefer to take screenshots from ours is that from here with the free one, with the free account, you can get, or no account at all, you can get access to all the countries, while in App Annie you can get a set of countries. But I wanted to show a varied set of information. So guys, this is your App Store this week, and this is your Play Store this week. What kind of apps do you like? WhatsApp, Instagram, Yandex Taxi, useful one, and VK. What do the US people like recently? Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Instagram. Seems pretty much the same, right? The next slide will show you the same information for Congo and for Kenya. Take a second to guess. What do you think they will show there? So remember that Mpesa goes from 2007, and this is the downloads. Some messengers, yeah. Congo, Kenya. So in Congo we have Facebook, Instagram, Facebook Lite, WhatsApp. In the App Store, we have Facebook, we have Messenger, Viber, that's a new one, YouTube, that's a new one, free video calls, that's a new one. And here, Uber, WhatsApp, Instagram, and then again, YouTube, free video calls. And in the Play Store, there is Instagram, Facebook Lite, and such. Now, I've been telling you there's not enough internet, and then I go and show you, oh look, there's Viber, and there is free video calls. How does that make sense? Reminding you that this is the App Store and this is the Play Store. So, the price of an iPhone, how many annual salaries would that be in countries like Congo or Kenya? Probably means that if you can afford an iPhone, you can afford the data package. So the App Store part may be less relevant if you want to aim people that are living the developing challenges more. Maybe less visitors. So here, if we focus on here, it's Facebook Lite, it's WhatsApp, which is light on data, and well, the pattern starts making sense. Next slide will be Vietnam and Japan. What are we going to see there? I didn't understand. Lime, okay. Vietnam, Japan. So in Vietnam, you can see here several games. Facebook, Facebook Lite, Messenger. Looking at the App Store again, Messenger, Facebook, Maps, YouTube, Viber, same pattern we were expecting. And then looking at Japan, many games. And then the interesting part is that lots of this is in Japanese. Now, you probably didn't notice because it makes sense to you, but in the Russian App Store, there were several apps that are actually also called, have Russian names. And it was not the case for Congo or Kenya, it was not the case for Vietnam. Why? Exactly, local developers are, or local developers that target the local crowd, not enough incentive for them. So you just go and get the average Western, or how you call them, apps. But Japan that is developed enough, it's not the case. So add this to the list where you put aside the number of languages per Africa. This is the Gini coefficient of inequality. It shows how much of the country's wealth distributed among how many people. So on the lower part, we see Norway, Germany. On the higher part, we see Seychelles, South Africa. And as you can guess, the lower, the more equality the country has. And yeah, Seychelles and South Africa. Anyone surprised? So I guess you cannot see from here, so I want to tell you that after Norway and Germany, there is Sudan, UK, and then Nigeria, USA, Congo, Kenya, South Africa. And my suggestion to this explanation is that in Sudan, everyone are equally have low income, while in Norway, you can argue that everybody have a fairly high equal income. And then when you go to Congo and Kenya, few people have more of the money. And yes, Congo and Kenya especially has a few big cities that are tech hubs. You can go there, you find accelerators, you find startup companies, and you find all the local competitors of Uber maybe, they come from those areas. That's why they're also ranked high in the IGDP. And then this is another question that you should ask yourself. So yeah, you want to develop for developing countries. Do you want to target those guys who will give you probably more money, or the other part that might give you less money but more challenge? And both answers are okay, just a focus question. And yeah, this is Africa, this is Africa, this is Africa. All of these are Africa. And just to choose your target. Any contribution you will make will be good. What kind of apps can you make? So yeah, there's medical, of course. For example, all the NGOs that go between the different cities and collect information whether it's about diseases, whether it's about the population size, whether it's about pregnant women. Educational, you can teach things from English to how plan your crops properly. Financial and whether financial goes where Mpesa, for example, is. Tourism, this is an interesting one. I was in Vietnam last month, and there you can do something that is called homestay. This means you go to the mountains, to some local tribes, and you just stay with them. You have no electricity, you have no running water, and when you get off the bus in that specific city, you have a group of like 20 local women in really cool traditional outfits saying, come stay at my house. Yes, yes, you should do this. And then if you don't know, if you didn't ask someone in advance how much you should pay for this, you may pay something really high for the locals, of course, which is maybe actually okay for a night stay for what we're used to. Or you can pay what is more commonly paid. How about making this into an app that you go and you plan in advance with someone to pick you up and just go and do the nice tours around? Or even things like in sharing Uber. There are around 6 big competitors in Africa to Uber. And every country, it behaves really differently. In some countries, they collaborate, for example, with the taxi companies, and that makes Uber the biggest one. This is, for example, in Egypt happening. In other countries, they don't collaborate with the taxis, and Uber is not significant there. And they have many local competitors that are doing this way better. An interesting fact is that almost across all Africa, Uber is being paid with cash. You cannot pay with the app. People don't want that. People also cannot have it the other side, the riders and the drivers. And as we saw, social media and entertainment, always there. Everybody want to talk, everybody want to share. So maybe you can come up with a cool idea to compress your selfies with the Snapchat ears and stuff. So the fun part, apps. Native and hybrid. For the non-app developers here, your app can be hybrid, which means it's basically in the web and it has a wrapper, or it's a native and it uses the native language. Then you have several options of doing that. The good sides for each and there's bad sides. So for hybrid, it may be faster development, but slightly slower execution. Native goes the other way. And my suggestion here is that you can focus on the group that has smartphones that are strong enough, but their users cannot afford the data. And take Go Mobile, which is a lovely repo in Golang, and use the point of Go, which is strong parallelism, apply this on the multi-core smartphones that there are, and see how you can compress stuff to make things more efficient. Now, Go Mobile is fun and unexplored area, kind of like going to a trip in deserts of Africa. Don't know what you can come across. So when you run Go Mobile help, you get this set of commands. This is pretty much what Go Mobile can do at this point. It can build your library. It can make you an APK. It can make and install the app on your phone. By the library, I mean, of course, the thing that you can put in your app and use, like something really strong parallelism, and you just use it in your app. And this is a fun line about build. I think you can see. iOS is chaotic. Use it in your own responsibility. And this is good probably, because from what we saw in the App Store, if you want to target locals, you probably want to target Android in the first place. And yeah, in the repo you can find the way to build a full app or build the library. And I would like to give you a quick demo now of how each of the apps would look like. Because the first option, the full Go, is still really raw, many options are not supported. So if you want to do anything visual, you're going to use OpenGL, which is a crazy overkill for visuals, but this is currently the option. So if anyone is into open source, you can consider contributing here. Now we're going to play the demo. This app is called Network, and what it does is it shows green once you have internet connection, and it shows red if you don't have internet connection. So this is from the emulator, and this is the behavior. When you try it on your phone, you just turn off the airplane mode and you see this behavior. Thank you very much, Florine, in the crowd, who was helping me to record this and struggle with this. And this was the AllGo app. Now, can I move to the next slide? Yeah, this is the Go library in an app example. So this is called Ivy. This was, the library was developed by Rob Pike, which is one of the developers of the Go language. And what it does is really strong calculations, like heavy, savvy calculations, using the parallelism. So this is an example of the calculation that it made super fast. Now we're going to play the demo to show how fast it goes. So star, it means power. Can I switch slides? So the point of the previous lovely set of calculations is that you can use it as most of the math magic to do really cool, maybe compression, maybe parallelism stuff. See how your favorite algorithm, how can you apply it, and just use it as a library or other things. And yes, beware, this is from the README, this is from the official documentation. You're using this in your own risk. If your phone explodes, don't use Galaxy 7. And gophers are the official mascot of the Go language. So quick vouch for demo. If for Golang, you should consider and try to use this language. It's really awesome. So are you convinced to go and try to do some cool app or cool experiments with code, with Go Mobile, without Go Mobile, but aiming at some developing country? Some things you should have in mind. You can get in trouble. Some countries are not considered free. So by this set, there are 3 definitions of what is freedom. So there's no surveillance, there's no regulation, and you cannot go to jail for being an activist. Pick a country you like, see what are the local norms, and try to work with these. UX. To read about the UX, this is a whole new magical world. There are lots of guides being built at the moment, some official, some not. Most of them would be pretty general, like target different screen sizes. But how about that language point that we talked about? Let's say you pick a country, and in that country you have 1 or 2 official languages, and you have another 100 dialects. This 1 or 2 official languages will help you reach 10% of the population, 15% of the population. All the other ones is pretty much a challenge. Maybe you don't want to use words. Maybe you want to use symbols. And talking to some people after giving this talk in another place, I got the really interesting feedback that even in Africa, when you go to stores, many times it shows the $sign to say that you can do money transfer there. This can save you lots of data because the average, many standard African characters would be heavier per character just because they're not the standard ones. So go and see, read about the UI, read about the UX. Anyone here familiar with the Asian apps and has seen those, or even websites? Halfway. Comparing those to apps that you may be more used to, there's a big difference. The standard UI and UX in Asian countries is very intense. So you go to a website and you see this blinking title and you see this jittering cute mascot, and the text is in different sizes and it's very full of pictures and red and black and colors attacking you. While you go to your app store and you see more cleaner or emptier interface. And this is just what is normal. This is what you're used to. This is what they used to. What is African people are used to. I don't know. See if you can make this research. And of course, social norms, symbols. See, maybe you don't want to release your app on the National Memorial Day of some country or some holiday. And this would be everything I want to say about this. I really hope I inspired you to go and take an action. And if you want to tweet, this is the hashtag. Thank you.
Вопросы?
Everything made perfect sense. Awesome.
У нас есть время, на самом деле, минут 5 для вопросов. Но если не хотите, можете поймать Наталью и с ней обсудить, если вы стесняетесь. Окей.
Where would I, as a totally mobile ignorant backend person, start if I wanted to learn more about developing an app and experiment?
You're asking where to find guidelines for design, or?
What would be, like if I know some Go, is the best place to start with their examples, or what would you recommend? What's my route? My route towards making an app.
This is an interesting question. Being myself a not mobile app developer, I went for Go, and it was bumpy ride, which probably will improve in the future. Well, I guess you should start with Android, and then see what libraries maybe you can make in Go, and then include those in an app that you should write in your favorite language, in Android, I guess.
Все, нет больше вопросов? Все так просто? Окей, давайте еще раз поблагодарим Наталью. Спасибо.